My name is Alan Kerwin. I'm the Learning and Public Engagement Curator here at the Butler Gallery, and I just would really like to introduce a project that we did over the past year and a half at the Gallery that's become a really important event for the Butler Gallery itself. The gallery, as you can see behind me, is in the Evans home here in the Johns Quay area of Kilkenny, and Butler Gallery had been located in Kilkenny Castle for 44 years, and in August the Butler moved to this location in a new neighbourhood in Kilkenny City. So it was very important for us that we really tried to reach out to the new communities that were around us, new for the gallery but not for the people who lived here, of course. And we were very conscious that we needed to make ourselves known and to welcome people into this space and to explain who we were. So the concept of a neighbourhood museum was born. We worked with Pauline O'Connell and Saturio Alonso, two local artists of national and international repute. They themselves very familiar with the communities who worked around here. They set up essentially over lockdown communications with the local residents, and a series of really innovative and creative projects emerged out of that work.
So we started with a project on Michael Street, which just runs at the back of the gallery, and two women had undertaken over the past 3 years a project whereby it was started or sparked by a very simple form of remembering and forgetting, actually, for that matter, where they couldn't remember who lived in a certain house. So one took upon herself, Connie Jordan, took upon herself to research who lived in each house using the electoral list and the census, and the houses were built in the early 1900s. And Kay Bannon made paintings, or portraits you could say, of each house. And it was a way for them to engage with their neighbours, some they knew, some they didn't know.
Well, basically what happened was Kay and I were watching, I had seen something on social media, and one of the things came up was a lady who lived on the street many years ago, and we were basically talking about the lady and how we remembered her and whatever, but Kay had been away for a while, and she said, gosh, I'd love to remember a lot of people. So she decided she would do a little project where she would go and she would paint all the houses on the street, do a painting, and that we would then try and build that in with a little bit of history about the people who actually lived on it.
I got involved in the painting then, and of course every now and again some other interesting painting would come up, so it really took us 3 years and probably would never be finished only for the Butler Gallery. So you can imagine that I had never in my mind that I would be in Butler Gallery with any sort of a project.
And we want to acknowledge the history of the past and bring it into the present day through great projects such as the Neighbourhood Museum. I can't wait to walk down Michael Street and see all the paintings in the windows.
It just seemed really fitting that a street could represent itself. So it's as if the history and the ghosts from those previous lives were merging, and it's not just stuck in the past. It definitely wasn't a project about the past, it's definitely about the now and into the future too.
Being away so long, I really had forgotten all the different people in the street, and it's just absolutely phenomenal now that we're beginning to know everybody. It was a fantastic experience. So Connie did an awful lot of research, and I would go mad if I had to do research on computer work and things like that. So we were the ideal couple, if you like, to do a project like this. But anyway, I really enjoyed my paintings and getting to know all the different people.
Well, I think that was the thing. You see, from when it started, from when I came up into the street first, I was 3, and everybody knew everybody back then. We knew who lived from number 1 to number 53, and you knew them right throughout the years. But that's the difference we actually found in the years, is that there was a lot of changing of people, and now we've ended up with so many different nationalities, and that's one of the things we found, that there were so many people on different ends of the street that we had never met before. So the good thing was that we've actually now have met everybody.
You see, I came back to the house I was born in after, I suppose I was gone for maybe 60 years nearly.
Yeah.
And lucky enough was able to hold on to the house and sleeping in the room I was born in. You know, this is a fantastic connection when you get like that.
Just to say, we are going to start walking, but you can come in your own time. We'll be stopping at various houses and that. And we were putting them in the windows the other day. People were out cleaning their windows, and you know, it became really quite important that you can see the art as well, and it's best represented. You know, if you live in a particular house as we're coming along, please. This is your house then. Oh, that's your house. Sorry. Yes. Okay. We'll go. You're next.
Oh, we love it. Yeah, definitely. We're so central, near everything. And we have great neighbours.
I'm our neighbour.
Yeah.
Are you next door? No. Oh, this one. Okay.
Yeah, it was the most beautiful community to grow up in, and even it's so lovely. Today, like seeing Claire Tobin, who lived 3 doors up, and Greg, who's in number 20, because we all went to school together.
The real experience was, you knocked at a door, it was opened wide, and you were welcomed in, and that was just amazing. No matter what nationality, no matter what, and without exception, given the freedom to rummage through their windowsill.
Yeah.
And put up an easel and a bit of a picture, and some of them we had to digitise, etc. But like, it was just absolutely incredible. And to know, now at my age, holding the names is going to be difficult, but I walk up the street now and I say, that's that, and that's them, and that's them. And it's really just fantastic, really.
Yeah.
He had the first television on the street. And we used to, as kids, come up to watch on a Sunday National Velvet. And there was, all of us sat on the floor in the sitting room.
But we never turned anyone away.
But we were put out after National, but we only got in to watch National Velvet, and then we were thrown out. Isn't that right, Anne? It was a year ago then. But Sunday evening we had our half hour.
We wanted to watch.
8:45.
We wanted to watch Have a Gun, We'll Travel.
All right.
Brother bought the house and then sold it. And then when my late husband's father, he emigrated, he went to Scotland. He lives in number 43, yes. Okay. And then he come home on holidays, and we were young, of a photograph, and I met him, and then I ended up going to Scotland. My husband died then, and this house come on the market, that was it.
Okay.
No time. Best thing ever, because I wouldn't live anywhere else in Kilkenny.
Yeah, no.
My late husband said, Anne wants a house here.
Yeah.
And we looked at houses before, but no, this is it. Yeah.
I have a huge box full of stuff upstairs of things that we've dug out of the garden, and we threw away bucket loads more. Endless bottles, masses of broken china, knuckle dusters. I didn't put the knuckle dusters in the window. I didn't want to let the street down. Lots of perfume bottles, lots of Smithwick's bottles, lots of poison and medicine bottles. So the idea that we didn't have a throwaway society 100 years ago is a little wide of the mark, because everyone just threw stuff in the backyard. So I've been collecting it all. Every time you find something, it's kind of like finding the final page of a novel and wondering about like the 300 pages that came before.
The other thing we found was that, I mean, we did look at the 1901 census and the 1911 census, but because the houses weren't built until about 1910 upwards, the paintings didn't really marry up with the houses or with the census. So we had to sort of start from about 1930 up back from that. So we got the voters electoral list from 1930s, And so we were able to then match the people to those houses at that time. So it was from there on we went, and it was just amazing the amount of people that have gone through.
The amazing thing about the digitisation of the census was that if you didn't know where your ancestors lived on that particular night, you had no way of finding them because you could not search by name. It's all organised by district electoral division. So you could get lucky, but there were lots of people who would say, I know my father lived there and such address. He could have actually been in the neighbours, or he could have been visiting his sister or brother in an adjoining county. And unless you knew that, you had no way of finding out exactly where they lived. And there's always a couple of kind of funny little quirks. Animals, people's pets, often were put into the census. There was one family certainly, and the name has been crossed out over the dog, because the dog is as much of a member of the household as anybody else.
When I was a small kid, there was a dog. I had a dog, Patch. Patch? Did you?
We had Patch, yeah.
Frightened the life out of me, but anyway, he was
frightened, yeah, he used to fly.
He'd cycle down, he'd come out after you. You had to cycle pretty quickly
What's
to
his name? Fitzgerald's, Frank Fitzgerald's out there. His son was there one day and the patch flew off. Yeah. And come back, Patch. No wonder he won't come back. He said, my name to put on the dog.
We've all extended the houses now. But she said they reared, I think, 6 or some children with 2 small rooms. And she wouldn't have it any different.
Yeah.
She wasn't the slightest bit interested.
We had 9 in ours and we only had the 2 small rooms.
Yeah, wasn't it amazing?
And no toilets inside.
No,
we had an outdoor
right.
toilet,
yeah.
We had an outdoor tap,
yeah.
So there was no water inside, and we had gas as opposed to electricity.
We were very lucky. We came from the country. And
with 11.
Was Medaway the country?
No, I came from the country originally. Oh no, I wouldn't have done. You're very sharp. I can't pass any lies on to you.
It's like being on holidays and you're coming out of your chalet and someone else is coming out of theirs, and they all just gather in the back and to see the kids still running up and down the street. I mean, you could be anywhere in the world. To be honest with you.
There's really more kids in it now than there was sort of 20 years ago, is there?
Well, probably 20 years ago maybe, but certainly when we were there, I mean, every house on the street had, there was 9 of us in it, so and a lot of the families had big families then. So
there were some stories earlier of antics in the back garden, but I don't think I could put it on record.
The whole thing was great to just remember basically what happened from our childhood to now, and then to be able to put names to the people that were there.
When people start letting you into their homes, that's just remarkable. I am completely stunned by that. Right into the heart of their home, all levels, and as they say, live on a street or a little village is much better than living in a city, because you have everything, you have everybody. And emotionally I'm quite disturbed about it all, because I find it just so rewarding to be meeting all these people. And I'm hoping now perhaps to do just pencil heads of them and then link that into their history, because if you're doing that kind of thing, people talk to you as well, when you're doing that kind of thing. And that's where my focus. While I like to get the past, I would like to get their own stories, even more so, because that's really enriching.
We used to have square windows. Do you
Yes,
remember that?
that's right.
Connie,
yes,
remember? We were playing with trays in there, and I jumped up in the window and I put my knee through it. And that was me. I was terrified of your mother.
Did you pay with my parents?
I was terrified.
Did I have to do it out
Remember,
my
Connie? And my knee was cut, but she was more worried about my knee. I was worried about, I'll never forget it. Never forget it. Jumped right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Would our parents or grandparents ever have guessed in the year 2021, with 41 nationalities, they'd be blessed? The street is where the sound of the factory hooter would blow. Now it's the sound of skateboards and scooters, But as Kate said, there is nowhere else on earth that we would rather be than on the street where we live with neighbours like me.
factory is on Mouvetone Street, which is more or less a parallel street as well. The boot factory in itself remains. It's not a place of production, but it is a very interesting sawtooth roof industrial building. It has a very important history in that it made moccasin boots, most of which were exported. It employed over 500 people, and there were piecework, which meant that people made the boots and sewed the boots by hand in their homes. So throughout the city and the countryside, people actually hand sewn the boots and then brought them in and got paid per piece, as it were. It has a big history in Kilkenny, albeit most of them were for sale abroad, like I said, and people were invited back in then for a one-day event where the owners presented the history of how the boot factory came about and the ownership and how it functioned over time.
Just to give you a brief history of where we're coming from then, in 1895, George Padmore, there was a Padmore, was in Leicester, and he formed a shoe company with a guy called Barnes, and they formed a company in 1897, Padmore and Barnes Limited, in Church Street in Northampton in the UK. A young man called St. John Davis joined them, and it was during the tenure of St. John Davis, who was the managing director in 1934 of Northampton, Padmore and Barnes, they decided to build a factory here. Well, the factory was built as an advanced factory and was bought by Padmore and Barnes in 1934 and was opened on May the 24th by Sean Lemass, who was at the time, Minister for Industry and Commerce. There was just the mart and a field on the other side of us. So it was quite a different setup from when the factory was built and right into the late 50s. Now we're nearly in the centre of town with the cinema on one side of us and McDonagh Junction, and we don't know yet what's going to go on in the mart side over there. So it's a very big change in terms of the whole setup of the street. Also, obviously, we only have a certain number of people working in the retail and the offices now, whereas before you had something like 300 or 400 people in the building behind us. So we're still making shoes, we're still exporting shoes, but we're probably more wholesale, retail, and in charge of manufacturing as opposed to physically manufacturing it on the site.
This is a fantastic project and long overdue, I have to say. The boot factory resonates so much within the community here in Kilkenny and beyond, from people who worked directly in the factory or did piecework in their own homes down the decades. But even the building itself, from a heritage perspective, is iconic on the landscape of Kilkenny. With that beautiful sawtoothed roof, it's an amazing structure. And to have factories in the heart of the town, which was part and parcel of what towns were about. When people, the factory horn went off and people went in and left in the evening time, was part and parcel of the rhythm of Kilkenny.
When I was a child living in John Street, when 1 o'clock had come, everybody was told to keep in on the paths, because the bicycles would literally come down. The whole street would be covered in bicycles, and were they going very, very fast. Everyone had only the 1 hour, and they were like living maybe on the other side of town, and they had to have their lunch and come back, and so you just avoid it, especially 1 o'clock. That's when 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock, because they were staggered other times, but they were the times you avoided.
The two archways there. The first one was the original 1934 office, and the far one was St. John Davis's managing director's office. And if you look on the wall, see there was 3 people working in the office. So when he wanted someone, he'd press a button, and whichever light, like, you know, if it was you or me or someone else you wanted, the light would come up, so you knew which was your light. This was the managing director's office in 1934, and that was his bathroom.
I remember trying to peep over a kind of a high, I suppose like a clerk's desk or whatever, and I just loved the idea of I knew there was a hive of activity and people making stuff in behind, and the smell of the leather, that kind of heady, sweet smell. Great memories, and I still love to go in and ramble around in the boot factory, although very different. Great memories, and just the smell of the leather will always remain with me.
The reason I stood up here, this is a foreman's bench, and anyone who's connected to the factory may remember these. There's a couple of them around still. This one retired in 1986 and was used up to then, and was probably about 20 or 30 years old at the time, so it's a fair age at the moment. I have a last here, which is a metal last, which was one of the lasts that was here in 1934 when the factory was built. And then they would use timber lasts after that, and then the plastic lasts would be the ones that are being used now today or currently. And these would be obviously what you pull the shoe over on to get the shape of the shoe when you're just before you're putting the sole onto it, to keep the shape of the shoe and to help in the manufacturing.
I've no bad memories of it. Just that it was hard work, but it was good fun. Lovely characters in it, Most of them now are passed away, but but still, all good memories.
What's happening a lot now is you see this type of thing. You're making the shoe, but now you're putting a flash in it or something, or a different colour, or this type of thing, or two-tone in the shoe with a light sole. So that's a lot of what's happening internationally, So, but that's what we'll be selling on the shop floor, like here, They're straightforward shoe, straightforward. But that shoe, if I'm right, that shoe was made in Kilkenny. Wow. It was actually made in Kilkenny. The upper was made in Kilkenny. The sole was put on in Portugal, whereas some of the later ones are made in Portugal,
From a heritage perspective, it's wonderful to take in oral histories of people and their stories and their experiences of the factory being here on Wolfe Tone Street for so long. I think it's going to be a really important piece of work, and I'm looking forward to seeing the outputs of it over the next number of weeks and months.